Lucille Ball was halfway through her Saturday morning grocery shopping at the original farmers market in Los Angeles when she noticed the man on the bench and stopped. What she did with the 2 bags of groceries in her hands is a story that begins with fresh tomatoes and ends somewhere nobody who was there that day expected. It was a Saturday morning in June 1961, and the original farmers market at 3rd and Fairfax was doing what it did every Saturday morning, the particular combination of locals buying produce and tourists taking photographs, and the specific energy of a place that has been serving the same function in the same location for long enough that it no longer needs to explain itself. Lucille Ball had been coming to the market on Saturday mornings for the better part of a decade when her schedule allowed it. She came alone, without an assistant, without the particular infrastructure of fame that accompanied her to most other places. She came in plain clothes, sunglasses sometimes, a scarf if the morning was cool, and she bought vegetables the same way everyone else at the market bought vegetables, by looking at them and asking the vendor questions and deciding whether the price was fair. The market knew who she was, the vendors knew, the regular shoppers knew. But there was an understanding at the original farmers market that had developed over years of these Saturday mornings, a kind of unspoken agreement that what happened here was shopping, not performance, and that the woman buying tomatoes at the produce stand was a customer, not a celebrity, and that the difference mattered. She had been there since 8:30 that morning. It was now 9:15. She had 2 large paper bags, one in each arm, filled with the kind of produce that a person buys when they know how to cook and intend to do it. Tomatoes, fresh basil, 3 kinds of peppers, a small wheel of cheese from the dairy vendor, a loaf of bread from the bakery stall that was still warm enough that she could feel the heat through the paper bag. She was walking toward the exit on Fairfax when she saw him. He was sitting on one of the wooden benches near the market entrance, the kind of bench that had been there long enough to have absorbed decades of use and become something other than furniture. He was in his early 60s, lean in the way that men become lean when food has been scarce for a sustained period, wearing clothes that had been good quality once and were now simply clean. His hair was gray and cut short in the particular way that suggested military service at some point in a life that had gone in directions he had not planned. He had a piece of cardboard beside him on the bench, handwritten in neat block letters. Veteran, hungry, anything helps. He was not holding the sign. He was sitting beside it with his hands in his lap, looking at the people walking past with the careful, neutral expression of someone who has learned that asking for help is a risk that does not always pay, and who has made his peace with that fact. Lucille Ball walked past him. She did not stop. She did not slow down. She walked past the bench toward the parking lot with her 2 bags of groceries and got about 20 feet before she stopped. She stood there for a moment, holding her groceries, looking at nothing in particular. Then she turned around and walked back. She did not walk back to the bench. She walked back into the market. She went to the produce stand where she had bought the tomatoes 15 minutes earlier. The vendor, a man named Carlos Mendez, who had been running that stall for 12 years and who had sold vegetables to Lucille Ball on perhaps 40 Saturday mornings, looked up when she approached. "Forget something, Miss Ball?" he asked. She set down her bags. "I need 2 more of everything I just bought," she said. Carlos Mendez looked at her for a moment with the expression of someone who has been asked a question that seems simple but whose simplicity he does not quite trust. "2 more bags, same as what you got?" he said. "Exactly the same," she said. "Please." He filled 2 more bags. She paid for them. She went to the bakery stall and bought a second loaf of bread. She went to the dairy vendor and bought a second wheel of cheese. She went to the small deli counter near the back of the market and bought a container of soup that was still hot from the morning's batch. By the time she was finished, she had 4 bags of groceries, 2 in each hand, and she was walking back toward the bench where the man with the cardboard sign was sitting. He saw her coming. He saw the bags. His expression did not change, which was the expression of someone who has seen many things approach him over the course of a difficult period and has learned not to assume anything about what they will do when they arrive. Lucille Ball stopped in front of the bench. She set down 2 of the bags beside the cardboard sign. "You served," she said. It was not a question. The man looked at her. He looked at the bags. He looked back at her. "Yes, ma'am," he said. His voice was quiet and careful, the voice of someone who is trying to understand what category this interaction belongs to before he commits to a response. "Korea. 2 tours, 51 and 53. She set down the other 2 bags. "This is the least I can do," she said. The man stood up. He was taller than she had expected, well over 6 feet, with the posture of someone who had carried himself a certain way for most of his life, and whose body had not forgotten how even when circumstances had changed. "Ma'am, I can't," he started. She held up a hand. "You already did," she said. There was something in the way she said it that was not negotiable, not unkind, not sharp, but final in the way that people are final when they have made a decision and are not interested in revisiting it. The man looked at the 4 bags of groceries sitting on the bench beside his cardboard sign. He looked at Lucille Ball standing in front of him in her plain clothes and sunglasses with her car keys in her hand. "What's your name?" she asked. "Thomas," he said. "Thomas Whitfield." "Thank you for your service, Thomas," she said. She turned and walked toward the parking lot. Thomas Whitfield stood beside the bench for a long time after she left, looking at the 4 bags of groceries. Several people walked past. A few of them looked at him. Nobody said anything. He sat down. He opened the first bag. Inside was the produce, fresh and carefully selected, the kind of vegetables that someone buys when they know what they are doing in a kitchen. In the second bag, bread and cheese. In the third bag, more produce. In the fourth bag, at the very bottom beneath a container of soup that was still warm, he found an envelope. Inside the envelope was a $100 bill and a note, handwritten on plain paper, 3 sentences in careful script. "Find a shelter. Get a meal. You deserve both." At the bottom of the note, a phone number and a single word: veterans. Thomas Whitfield read the note twice. Then he sat on the bench holding it for a while without moving. The phone number was for the Veterans Affairs office on Wilshire Boulevard. He called it on Monday morning from a payphone outside a diner where he had used $15 of the 100 to buy breakfast and coffee, and had sat in a booth for 2 hours because the waitress had not asked him to leave. The person who answered the phone at the VA office was a woman named Patricia Ruiz, who had been working veteran services for 8 years, and who had developed the particular combination of efficiency and compassion that people develop when they have seen enough suffering to know it when they hear it, and enough bureaucracy to know how to navigate it. Thomas Whitfield told her about the note. He told her about the phone number. He told her about the $100 bill and the 4 bags of groceries and the woman at the farmer's market who had given them to him, and then walked away. Patricia Ruiz was quiet for a moment. "Did she give you her name?" Patricia asked. "No, ma'am," Thomas said. "Just the number." Patricia Ruiz made some notes. She asked Thomas where he was staying. He told her he had been sleeping in his car for 3 months, a 1954 Chevrolet that he had owned since 1956, and that no longer ran well enough to drive reliably, but that still had a back seat. She asked him if he had eaten that morning. He said he had. She asked him if he needed medical attention. He said his back hurt most of the time, but he had learned to manage it. She told him to come to the office that afternoon. She told him to bring the note. She did not ask who the woman at the farmer's market was, because she had been working in veteran services long enough to recognize that some questions are less important than what gets done with the answers. Thomas Whitfield went to the VA office that afternoon. He brought the note. Patricia Ruiz looked at it once and made a phone call. Within 2 weeks, Thomas Whitfield was enrolled in the Transitional Housing Program for veterans. Within a month, he had a room in a facility in Westwood that was clean and quiet and had a door that locked. Within 6 months, he had part-time work at a hardware store in Santa Monica, the kind of work that did not require him to be on his feet all day, which his back appreciated. He kept the note. He did not frame it. He kept it in his wallet, folded carefully, in the space behind his driver's license, where it stayed for the next 19 years until his death in 1980. His daughter found it when she was going through his belongings. She read it 3 times before she understood what she was reading. She showed it to her mother, Thomas's ex-wife, who he had remained on civil terms with, despite the divorce that had come during the difficult years. Her mother looked at the note and looked at the $100 bill that was still with it, uncashed, kept as a kind of evidence. "Your father told me that story," her mother said. "I didn't believe the part about who it was." "Did he ever try to find her?" his daughter asked. "No," her mother said. "He said she didn't do it to be found. She did it because it needed doing." Thomas Whitfield worked at the hardware store for 12 years. He was reliable, competent, the kind of employee who showed up when he said he would and did what he said he would do. He told the story of the farmers market to exactly 4 people in those 12 years. His sponsor in the AA program he joined in 1963. His daughter once, when she asked him how he had gotten off the street. His supervisor at the hardware store, who had asked him during the hiring interview what had changed between the time he was sleeping in his car and the time he was applying for the job. And a young veteran he met at a VA group session in 1974, 23 years old, recently back from Vietnam, sleeping in a park in Venice Beach, who reminded Thomas of himself in 1961. Thomas bought him a meal. He gave him the phone number for Patricia Ruiz, who was still working at the VA office on Wilshire. He told him about the woman at the farmer's market. He did not tell him who the woman was. The young veteran went to the VA office. Patricia Ruiz, who had been doing this work long enough that very little surprised her, was not surprised. She enrolled him in the housing program. He got a room. He got a job. He stayed in touch with Thomas for 6 years, until Thomas died. At the funeral, he told Thomas's daughter the story of the meal and the phone number. "Your father saved my life," he said. Thomas's daughter looked at him. "Somebody saved his first," she said. She still has the note. It is in a safety deposit box in a bank in Pasadena, California, along with her father's discharge papers and the photographs from his service. She has been asked twice by people researching Lucille Ball's life if she would be willing to donate it to an archive. She has declined both times. "It wasn't for an archive," she says. "It was for my father." Lucille Ball never mentioned the incident. There is no record of it in any interview, any biography, any account of her life that was published during or after her lifetime. The only people who knew about it were Thomas Whitfield, Patricia Ruiz, the people Thomas told, and the vendors at the original farmer's market who saw her buy the extra groceries and walk back to the bench. Carlos Mendez, who sold her the second round of vegetables that morning, was asked about it once in 1989 by a journalist writing a piece about the market's history. "Did you ever see celebrities do anything unusual?" the journalist asked. Carlos thought about it for a moment. "I saw a lot of people buy groceries," he said. "That's what people do at a market." He did not elaborate. The journalist moved on to other questions. If this story reminds you that the most important acts of generosity are often the ones nobody ever hears about, subscribe, leave a comment, and hit the notification bell. More stories about who Lucille Ball really was, away from the cameras and the studio lights, are coming every single week.